Hey, good morning, PCC. It's really good to be with you this week. Like I always say, it's my favorite time of the week because I get to spend with you. Except I don't really get to spend with you because you're on the other side of a screen and I'm on the other side of a camera. And so I still want to interact with you. And the best way I know how is that if you in the chat, whatever platform you're on, if you just type in, if I say something that resonates to you, type in amen. If I say something that like, hey, this makes sense, I want to share it with somebody else, just type it out because anybody who's watching it afterwards sees that. And I also watch it afterwards because I want to see what's resonating with you. So if you do that for me, I'd be very happy and I'll feel like we were all together. All right? All right, good. So we're in week 9 of quarantine. I believe it's week 9 of quarantine. And it feels a whole lot like, I don't know for you, but for me, it feels like a whole lot like week 109 because I can't even remember. I struggle to remember what life was like before quarantine. And so you hear a lot of talk about the new normal and that we're kind of in the new normal because like 9/11, after 9/11, like life as we know it was altered. Well, now life as we know it is altered. And in many ways, that is, you can think of all the ways, but in some ways, it really is the same. The new normal is somewhat like the old normal. And before COVID-19, and you might have been feeling like stressed out about having this too much work. And now you're stressed out because maybe you don't have any work, right? Your work is gone. Before quarantine, you're thinking about all the stuff that, I just, all the stuff that I got to do. Now you're like stuck in your house and there's not that stuff to do. And maybe your situation has nothing to do with COVID-19. Maybe your situation is you're just stressed out and overwhelmed right now because you're home a lot and you discover that you don't really like being home. You actually rather be out of the house because it's just constant arguments. You're spending more time with your wife, you're arguing a lot more with your wife, you're spending more time with your husband, you're arguing a lot more, or with your parents. It's like, my God, and these kids are driving me crazy. I wish I could just put them back into daycare or into school. You're just begging for school, and you're stressed out about that. Or maybe you're stressed out because of what the situation that's currently happened in our country right now. In our country right now, we have a situation where something has always happened. If you're black and you're black male especially, it's just really a terrible time, and you're stressed out. If you're a parent of a black male child, you just don't want them to be out on the road because God, I don't know what could happen to them. Just take some trigger happy person or something like that, and so you're overwhelmed because even with quarantine, it doesn't really matter. Because I know I think about that for my kids. And quarantine had nothing to do with it. So I'm overwhelmed. I'm stressed out. And I got to keep remembering that, hey, there's somebody who controls them. And you may be stressed out because your situation could be summed up. I'm just stressed. And anytime you feel overwhelmed, anytime you feel like this kind of overwhelming feeling that's coming over you, well, it's summed up in one word: stress. And we use that word a lot, and it's always in a negative context. But the effects of stress in our body is actually not all negative. In fact, it's downright positive, and it's positive because we were designed by God to handle stress. And you're like, well, why would God design us to handle stress? Well, because he knew something that we all know, right? That in this life we will have troubles. In fact, he himself said it in John 16:33. He said, in this life you'll have trouble. And God never promised a trouble-free life. And somehow we kind of get it all messed up. We inside our head think that God promised us this trouble-free life. God did not promise it. In fact, he promised the opposite. He said, you're going to have troubles. And because you're going to have troubles, I'm going to create a system inside of you that's going to be able to deal with the troubles that you're going to have. And that is called our stress response. So whenever we have trials, whenever we have problems, whenever we have stress, the system that God designed goes into action. Our body says, oh, there's a problem. And when it says there's a problem, what happens is that our body starts to secrete this hormone called adrenaline. And when adrenaline gets produced, it causes our heart rate to increase. And it causes our heart rate to increase. It causes our blood pressure to increase. And it causes our breathing to increase. And you know what that happens? It pushes more oxygen into our brain, and it pushes more oxygen into our body, and we produce more energy. We get extraordinary energy. Not only that, whenever we encounter stress, the body also produces cortisol. And cortisol increases the sugars and the glucose in our bloodstream. And it then enhances our brain to use that glucose for increased thinking and better cognitive abilities. And that makes us be able to make faster and better decisions. But it also does something else. It suppresses all of the functions. It's like any functions that's not necessary for dealing with the problem at hand. The body's like, I don't need to work on that. So it takes energy, it takes resources from that side of your body and puts it into dealing with the problem at hand. So your digestive system, you find out that you may not want to eat, because you're working on an issue. You find out that your immune system kind of that gets suppressed momentarily. And what it is like your body declaring a state of war on the problem. It's like the president saying, I've declared a national emergency. All things go towards dealing with that problem. And that's why you can cram for a test all night when usually you can't stay up all night. And you can pass a test. You can thank stress for that. That's why when somebody cuts you off and you get frustrated you can swerve out because your brain kicks into thinking, and you can thank stress for that. And I say that's good. As a matter of fact, that's more than good. That's great. That is what I call an intelligent design from an intelligent designer. But there are two problems. Problem number one is your body doesn't know whether or not the threat is real or the threat is perceived. In other words, it acts the same way whether the problem is real or the problem is perceived. Your body's like, there's a problem. And so your body's like, I gotta react the same way, just in case it's real. But the second thing is that the body was not designed to operate. God did not design us to operate in this way for more than a momentary point in time. And the issue is that if your body runs this way for an extended period of time, well, all that good stuff turns into bad stuff because God didn't design your body to operate that way in an extended period of time. So that increased heart rate that we were talking about, well, that turns to heart disease. Well, that increased blood pressure that we talked about that helped you give you energy level. Well, that turns into hypertension or high blood pressure. That extra glucose that you got. Well, that turns into diabetes. And the extra cognitive ability, that extra thinking ability, the ability to make great decisions. You know what happens to that? Well, everything just starts to work in reverse. It just starts to work on the backstroke. And if I keep going back, I'll probably trip over something. But that's what happens when we have extended period of stress. We can't think clearly. We make bad decisions. And then all our problems just seem bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that starts to trigger other things that we talked about in the previous week. Starts to trigger worry. It starts to trigger anxiety. It triggers depression. And whenever we get depressed, what happens is that we pull away from people and we go insular. And then we turn into, we're not so much fun to be around anymore. We start snapping at people. We start lashing out at people. We get irritable, and we turn into grumpy Garys or negative Nancys, or what we talked about a few weeks ago. And not only that, that we go into a period of loneliness because the root cause is stress. Well, what happens? We start to have physical problems. We have chronic headaches. We have sleep problems, which just makes the problem worse. And we have what everybody loves or not, weight gain. And so today I want to close out our series on emotional, mental wellness by talking about managing stress and not being overwhelmed. So I just want to, before we just kind of go into the rest of the message, I just want to just commit this time to the Lord in prayer. Father, I pray that you just speak through me. Lord, I pray that today as I speak and give your word, but not only your word, the principles behind your word, but not only the principles behind your word, but the practices behind the principles behind your word, practices that we should use to change our lives. I pray that we'll not only be hearers, but we'll be doers, because if we just hear alone, that doesn't do anything. But we got to hear and we got to put these things into practice. Lord, I pray, Lord, that this message will resonate with folks in a way that's just nothing short of miraculous. In Jesus' name, amen. In the Bible, there was a man that had more stress in one day than any single person could imagine. That man's name was Job, and there's a whole book in the Bible that's written about him. So a little bit about Job's story. The Bible tells us that Job was a wealthy man. In fact, he was so wealthy that the Bible tells us in Job 1:3 that he was the richest man in the area. He was the richest man in the town. He's the richest man in a geographical, it could have been the country. But not only was Job rich in terms of financial resources, Job was also blessed because he had a big family. Job had 10 kids. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and Job was an all-around good guy. In fact, the guy who was the person who was the author of the biography of Job said, man, Job was a man of great integrity. How often, we like to see our businessmen and our business people having great integrity. And with all of that, you'd have thought that Job would have no concerns, right? You would have thought that he would have no stress because, after all, rich people don't get stressed like poor people do. Rich people got money. And so when you have an abundance of possessions, right, there's no stress. Life is good. You can buy anything you want. You can live the way you want to. You see, if you think that, you'd be wrong. You see, because Job had many things that he was stressed out about, he had the stress of making the right financial decisions for his family. To make right financial decisions to make sure his business was running properly, because he had many mouths that needed to be fed. Job had the stress of keeping his family together, and he was always worried about money and about the family and all that. And this strayed heavily, and Job lived in a fear of what ifs. He lives in the fear of what ifs, and it was overwhelming, all those what ifs that Job lived in the fear of. I think many of us can identify with Job right now, because we're living the fear of our own what ifs. What if I go outside without a mask? What if I go jogging without a mask and somebody comes and they just happen to breathe on me and the wind carries it into my nose? Or maybe it gets into my eyes and my eyes aren't covered. Or like what if I touch a shopping cart and I forgot to put sanitizer on my hand? Or what if I don't get called back from furlough? I'll get my job back. What if I don't get married because, man, my biological clock is ticking and God knows that I want kids? What if I don't get married? What if I can't even find a boyfriend or girlfriend? What if? What if? What if my son goes out there and gets stopped by a road cop? What if he's running through a neighborhood and somebody thinks that he's a bad kid? I tell you that when Matthew wanted my son Matthew, I love talking about Matthew because Matthew's so much like me. When Matthew wanted to get dreads, I'm like, all the thing that was going through my mind, what if somebody sees him and just looks at him and just thinks that he is going to be a troublemaker and pulls out a gun on him because they think that this is the case? And what if? And we drive ourselves crazy. Well, what if? And this is where Job was at. Despite being in the middle of all his blessings, Job was thinking about the what ifs. You may ask me, well, how do I know that? Well, I'm glad you asked me that, right? Because I know, because in Job 1:5, the author tells us that Job would purify his children. He would get up early in the morning and offer a burnt offering for each one of them. For Job said to himself, perhaps, maybe, quite possibly, I don't really know, but it is possible that maybe they have sinned and have cursed God in their hearts. I don't really know. They're like they're going to church, but I don't really know what they do outside. And the author said this was Job's regular practice. Job was like, I don't know what they're out there doing, but I'm going to make sacrifices for them. So every day he's like, God, please forgive them for their sins, whatever their sins are. God, please, because Job didn't want all his blessings to go away from him. Job was worried about, because he has so many what ifs that he was thinking about. And you may say, well, Gary, I don't know if I get that. I'm like, well, really, if you look at just a little bit further on in the chapter, some bad things are going to happen to him that we're going to talk about in a second. Job said, the very thing that I feared the most, which means he was fearing and thinking about that and playing the what if, the very things have come upon me. Job was like, I want to do the right things. I don't want to upset things. There's too much riding on it. And then calamity happened, and Job lost it all. In verse 13, he said, one day when Job's son and his daughters were feasting at his oldest brother's house, a messenger arrived at Job's house with the news, your oxen was plowing, your donkeys were feeding beside them when the Sabians raided us, and they stole all the animals and killed all the farmhands, and I'm the only one who's escaped to tell you. I want you to imagine the scene that Job's kids are like eating together, they're having a party. It's like Jonathan moves out and he has his own place and he has his people over, and they still come over on Sundays, but this happened to be like a holiday Monday, and they're on a holiday Monday, and Job had just seen his kids and they're over there, and Job is chilling out at his home with Mrs. Job, and then some guy walked in and says, your oxen that was out there, in our case it would be like, Hey man, did you hear about the stock market crash? The stock market crashed and you lost everything and all your animals. But you see, for Job it went more than that, because it wasn't only the stock market crash for him. It was about to get much worse, because as he was talking, while that guy was talking to him, in verse 16, it says, while he was still speaking, another messenger arrived with this news. He says, the fire of God has come down from heaven and burned up your sheep and all your shepherd, and I'm only one who escaped to tell you. So imagine that you have this big complex, like you're so rich, you have a shopping complex, and all your money, a ton of money is in there, and lightning comes down and starts a fire and just blows the whole place up. Well, that's kind of like what happened. Fire came down and killed all the sheep and the shepherds, and only one escaped, and it was about to get even much worse, because while he was still speaking, a third messenger arrived with the news. 3 bands of Chaldean raiders have stolen your camels and killed your servants, and I'm the only one who escaped to tell you. The 3 bad news, all pump, within 5 or 6 minutes. 3 bad news. Job's whole possessions were like wiped out. And Job was probably thinking, oh man, I'm glad my kids weren't out there. And while he was there, the guy's telling him, a 4th one runs in and says, while he was speaking, another messenger arrived with the news. Your sons and daughters were feasting at their oldest brother's house. And then a wind came up on all sides and swept in, and it collapsed the house, and all your children are dead. And I'm the only servant who escaped to tell you this. Talk about stress. Talk about stress. Talk about being overwhelmed. Talk about a bad day. It's like, and people say, man, today was a bad day. Job had a bad day. So what do you do when life throws you a curveball? What do you do when life doesn't line up the way that you planned it? When all the things that you tried to do right isn't working out right? What do you do when your children have gone south? What do you do when you have invested all, you send your kids to PCC Kids Church or sons to whatever, they go to Christian school, and they turn out in following different principles than you? What do you do when it just doesn't work out right? What do you do when your house is the last place on earth you want to be because instead of it being a place of peace, it's a place of torment? What do you do when, as Proverbs says, it's better to live on the corner of a rooftop than in a house with a miserable woman? What happens when your wife is unreasonably unreasonable? What happens when your husband is a lazy bum? Sits around and smokes cigarettes all day and plays video games all day or whatever he does, doesn't do anything. What do you do when life doesn't line up the way you want to do? What do you do when you have an unexpected health issue? You got that diagnosis that you prayed. What do you do when problems come up for which there is no solution for? What do you do when you're just so overwhelmed that you feel there's no way out? What do you do when there is no end in sight? Short answer is you take control. You take control. You take control. Because you remember, your body doesn't know whether the threat is real or perceived. You have to tell your body that this is not real. You take control. You see, when you take control, you're doing what Paul said we need. Then you take every thought captive and we make it obedient to Christ. And when you do that, that's the Holy Spirit working inside of you. That's God working inside of you. But when you don't, you have uncontrolled stress. And uncontrolled stress is like a demon. And left uncontrolled, it controls you. Let me say that one more time. Uncontrolled stress, left uncontrolled, controls you. It controls you mentally, it controls you physically, it controls you spiritually. And left uncontrolled, it will kill you. It kills you mentally. It gives you mental illnesses. It destroys your mental and emotional wellness. It kills you physically from hypertension, diabetes, and all the things that comes from that. It kills you spiritually because God is the last person you really want to talk to. At least it's so you feel, because the demons of uncontrolled stress is telling you that God ain't gonna help you, because why serve God? He ain't helping you no way, no how. And so the antidote to that feeling of excessive stress or overwhelming stress is to take control. And so you got to take control of your mind. You got to take control of your thinking. You got to take control of your thoughts. You got to take control of your perspective. And when Job got the news in Job 1:20, he says that, Job really took control of it. He says, the Lord gave me everything I had, and the Lord has taken it away. Praise be the name of the God. Praise be the name of the Lord. In some of your old versions, it says, blessed be the name of the Lord. Or really, if you go back, you say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Job, right before he said that, says, I came here naked, and I'm going to leave naked. Job said, this is kind of like a whole thinking of his mind. He's like, I came into this world as a naked baby. I didn't do anything to deserve the brain that I had, to earn the things that I had. I didn't do anything that I had to be put in the family that I had, to be given the parents that I had, to be put in the country that I had. I didn't do any of that. All of that came from God. And the God who gave all of this, who has thinking that's higher than mine, and thinking that's vastly, and has the whole world that he's looking at, the whole perspective, that God in his infinite wisdom gave to me, and that God in his infinite wisdom has taken away from me. But that God is still God. And so Job right there had two options. He had option number one. He was like, I can blame God. His wife said to him, Job, what you should do is you should curse God and die. So God ain't doing nothing for you. Just curse him and die. So he had option one, to blame God, or option two, to praise God. And Job chose the latter. He said, I'm going to praise God. So here's how you change your perspective. If you believe that God is in charge, then start acting like it. If you believe that God is in charge, start acting like it. Here's the thing. You need to start, I need to start, we need to start acting based on our beliefs and not act based on our circumstances. We need to act based on what we believe. Like, do I believe this, yes or no? Or is this some plastic Jesus game that I'm playing? So we act based on our beliefs and our circumstances. And that's tough to do because the circumstances are right there in front of us. It's physical, where the belief is kind of internal and emotional, and it's hard to separate the physical from the emotional. This past week was the 5th anniversary of my father's death, and I remember about a week before he died, 5 years ago, he was in the hospital, and we were doing all these medical procedures on him. Well, not me. I did nothing. The doctors were doing all these medical procedures on him, trying to keep him alive. I remember looking at him in the hospital and thinking, man, I got to do something. Because it's just in my DNA. I can't sit around and do nothing. It's because I'm a man of action. I don't know anything about medicine, but, I'm a man of action. So I went to speak to each of his doctors. I spoke to his cardiologist, his pulmonologist, his nephrologist, his internist, and his primary care physician. And I would have spoken to anybody that was out there, because somebody's got to do something. Like, y'all go to all this school, y'all can't do nothing. And I remember saying, there's something that we can do. And one of his doctors summed it up for me this way. He said, at some point you have to determine whether or not, you have to determine the answer to this question. Are you prolonging life, or are you prolonging suffering? At that moment, an overwhelming feeling of helplessness came over me, because I realized at that point there was nothing that I could do for my dad. There's nothing that the doctors could do for him other than to prolong suffering. And no matter what we did, without a divine intervention, without the God who was in charge, he was going to die. And the question really was not if, was when, and just how much suffering that we wanted to put him through as he was going through. And it was then I decided that if God's promises are true, if God who says who he is and his promises are true, then what comes on the other side is gain. See, for my dad to live, for him was Christ. But God's promise was to die as gain. I'm like, why am I forcing him to stay here for suffering when on the other side of that is pure gain, is no suffering? At that moment, I had to decide, am I going to believe, act based on my belief or not? At work, I call it, at that time I decided, am I going to eat my own dog food? If I can dish it out, I got to be able to live by it. When that realization came, the helplessness left me. And I was at peace. And I got control of that overwhelming stress feeling. You got to take control of your thinking. The other thing that on your perspective, the other thing that you got to take control of is your actions. You see, in Job's life, when all of this calamity happened, Job's wife looked around and turned at him and says, Job, man, you just need to curse God and die. But Job didn't do that. Job took control of his action. In Job 1:22, he said, in all this, Job did not sin by blaming God. He's like, I am not going to blame God. I'm not going to curse God. I'm not going to do that. See, you got to take control of your perspective, because it's not enough to take control of your thinking. You got to take control of your actions. And so, thinking, taking control of your thinking, or taking control of your perspective, is necessary for taking control of your actions, but it is not taking control of your actions. Let me say that one more time so you get it. Taking control of your perspective is a prerequisite for taking control of your actions, but it is not taking control of your actions. I feel like a Sylvan commercial coming on. Thinking it and doing it are two different things. You have to act based on your changed thinking. You have to act based on your enlightened thinking. In science, they say that energy comes in two forms. There's potential energy and there's kinetic energy. And in order to understand it too, imagine for a second that you have a bow and arrow. And so you got the bow, the crossbow, and you put the arrow in there. And when you put the arrow in there, you pull it back, and you pull it back as hard as you can. And the tension is there, and the tension is so much that your arm is trembling, and you're right there. And when you pull it back, you know, that tension that you feel is potential energy. That's what your thinking is. When you change your thinking, it gives you the strength to do something different. And it has a potential energy, but unless you let it go and let the arrow fly, it's just potential energy. But when you let it go and the arrow is flying towards the target at 50 miles per hour, that is kinetic energy. Because kinetic energy is what does the work. Potential energy doesn't do anything, but sets it up for kinetic energy. And so that's what happens when you take control of your thinking. The potential energy is there to get rid of your stress, but it's only when you release and you let the action happen and you put it into motion that your stress gets relieved. You know, for the past 4 weeks, we've been talking about anxiety, worry, loneliness, depression, and we've given you all these tips. And some of you may say, you know, yeah, that's all great, but I still feel depressed. I'm like, yeah, we gave you some stuff to think about, but how many of those tips have you put into action to change from potential energy into kinetic energy? You have all this untapped thing, and God wants you to let go. If you're here in January, you'd get this what I'm about to say. Bump, bump. All right, you got to go back to January to listen to that. But the third thing is to take control of your priorities. And one of the major causes of stress is busyness. It is just doing too many things. We overcommit and we think we can do it all. And as I preach, I say, you know, this kind of stuff always gets to me because I'm not most guilty of this. And if my wife was looking at me, and she actually is looking at me right now, off camera, she's looking at me, you know, she reminds me of this all the time. Because I overcommit all the time. I overcommit at work. Whenever a new assignment comes up, I like, yeah, give it to me. I can do it, especially if it's like an interesting assignment. I'll just take it on. And I do it at home. You know, don't let me get out on a Saturday to go do an errand. I'll try to accomplish 50 things in an hour. And I even do it on vacations. And you might have heard me say this before, but I'll wake up on vacations like early in the morning, and I eat the biggest breakfast in the world because I don't want to stop for lunch, because eating is highly overrated on vacation. And if people say, I want to go back to the hotel room to rest, I'm like, what are you talking about? When we're on vacation, there's no time for rest. You can't waste your vacation while resting. You got to go out and do stuff, right? But all that ends up doing is causing stress. Stress with the family. And everybody's arguing with me like, we want to eat. I'm like, why you had breakfast? Why do you want to eat? Let's go out and do stuff. And it causes stresses on my body, and it causes stress, and it kills the very thing that I went on vacation for, which is peace of mind. And the antidote to all of that is to choose your priorities. You can't do it all, but you got to focus on, and this is just an illustration that if you have rocks, if you have sand, and you have pebbles, if you pour the sand and pebbles into a jar first, you won't have any space for the big rocks. But if you put the big rocks in first, you'll have space for the sand and the pebbles. And so you got to focus on the big rocks first. Like, what are those things? What are those things that you need to focus on first? So here's how this all plays out. Here's some tips for taking control. Number 1, schedule strategic stops. See, God did this in creation. At the end of 6 days, you know, God's working. In his 6 days, he's like, all right, I'm scheduling a strategic stop. God stopped. And Jesus did this all the time. You know, Jesus would be out like preaching, and then he's just like, guys, I'm taking a break. I'm taking a strategic stop. Y'all go on. I'm going up to go pray. I'm going up to go meditate. I'm going to go up to this. And you know, in our business, unless we do this, we will overdrive our stress responses. So you need to periodically throughout the day take breaks. And once a week, so every day you take some breaks throughout the day. And once a week, you need to have a day where your schedule is the most empty. And that's your Sabbath. And then at least once a year, you got to take a little extended break. That's called a vacation. And I'll just talk a little about on your breaks, right? I don't have time to get in all of this, but on your breaks, you got to practice mindfulness on your breaks. You got to practice meditation. And there's all this science that shows that meditation really helps to reduce your stress. And by the way, prayer is a form of meditation. So we should be doing that. But I want to give you something else. I'm going to give you some exercise here because I want to get really practical. You see, the Bible tells you stuff and then it gives you principles. But then, we got to put some practices on the principles. So here's a practice. I want you to do this. Maybe today as you're listening to this message, and it's a bright Sunday morning or maybe it's raining where you are, I want you to go outside and find a plant or a tree. Go out by yourself and look at a flower or a leaf, and I want you to focus on it. I want you to focus on it, and I want you to look at the contours of the leaf or the flower and examine the color and examine the texture and just spend about a minute just looking at it. And you're like, well, it's raining, I can't go outside. Well, do it with a fruit, pick a strawberry or something. And I want you to look at the strawberry, and I want you to, as you go to eat it, I want you to concentrate on tasting the flavors. And my son Matthew always say that strawberry is I think he says a catfish fruit or something like that, which means that it looks nicer than it is. But I want you to concentrate on that, and I want you to taste the colors. I want you to taste the texture and feel the texture and taste the flavors. That's a mindfulness exercise where you can do all of that. I want you to do another exercise. I want you to breathe. Breathing is therapeutic. It's actually one of the best ways to reduce the overwhelming feelings that's caused by excessive stress. And this is because the science shows that when you breathe in deeply, it sends a message to your brain to calm down and relax. And so here's the exercise I want you to do. I want you to do it right now. I want you to try this. Here, okay, everybody. Listen, yeah, that means you. Yeah, you. You. I want you to try this. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to breathe in through your nose slowly for 5 seconds. So for 5 seconds, take a breath. I want you to hold it for 1 and release it for 5 seconds. So here we go. Ready? Just doing that relaxes your mind. Start to have your mind think more clearly. Take a walk. Take time to take a walk outside. Get some sun. Vitamin D is extremely helpful. And do exercise, especially aerobics. I get chest pains from stress, and I've been through this so many times. I know it's just really my chest muscles tightening up. It's not a heart problem. But every time I do it, the cardiologist told me about this 10 years ago, go exercise. I do it, it takes care of that. The next thing is the schedule strategic starts. Start getting more sleep. So the first one, strategic stops, is strategic starts. Start getting more sleep. Your body functions better with more sleep. You'll make yourself less irritable, and you'll be infinitely more productive and effective to do that. You need about 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Start placing a higher priority on relationships. Start making time for your family, your parents and your kids and your significant other. Start writing stuff down. When you write down a to-do list, we always write to-do lists, but turn around and write a done list. I heard Dr. Ruth White say this. She says, you get more satisfaction of writing a done list, the things that I've done, than you get out of crossing off a to-do list. So move stuff from your to-do list to your done list and look at your done list periodically. Journals, I mentioned before so many times. And the last thing I'll mention is, for really doing it, is schedule strategic time with God. Schedule time for God and schedule time with God. Because that is a humongous stress reliever. You see, the belief that there's a God who supremely cares about you, The belief that that there's a God who's fighting for you, and that absolutely nothing that happens to you can happen to you without God saying that's okay for it to happen to you, because that's what he did with Job. He okayed that. That belief that no weapon that's formed against me will prosper. That believes that that God is fighting for us. You know, that song says. You know, when I was growing up, there was a song called "With Christ in the Vessel, we can smile at the storm as we go sailing home." Because that's what Job did. He took time out. He dug deep, and he dug deep with his emotions, and he poured it all out to God. He's like, God, I can't take this, and he can't take this, and he was going to pour it out. But in Job 120, it says, Job shaved his head, and he bowed to the Lord, and he worshiped. He worshiped God. He poured it out to God, and he trusted God, and ultimately God delivered him. He could have had many reactions. He could have gone, but he chose worship. And over time, God gave him back twice everything he'd lost. He gave him back his peace. He gave him back his joy. He gave him back his peace of mind. And what he did for Job, he wants to do for you. And he wants to do for you today. He wants to restore your joy. He wants to restore your peace. He wants to drop that overwhelming sense of being overwhelmed. And he wants to give you peace of mind. So in a moment, I'm going to pray for you. But my prayer is that if you're feeling overwhelmed right now, my prayer is actually that you feel more overwhelmed. I hear what you're talking about. Well, not more overwhelmed by the things that's stressing you out, but rather overwhelmed by God's goodness, God's grace, God's power, God's mercy, God's unconditional love. Because that is the only way that I want you to live. That's the only way that God wants you to live. And so I just want to pray for you right now that if you're in this, that you'll take everything that we've said here, the kinetic energy, and release it and turn it into kinetic energy. And that God will transform your life. But it starts with one thing, a personal relationship with Jesus. That He, and make Him your God. Make Him your protector. Make Him your guide. And so I just want to pray for you right now. Heavenly Father, Lord, I pray for any person here, Lord, who is suffering from excessive stress and the debilitating effects mentally, spiritually, and physically that comes from that. Lord, I pray, Lord, right now that you'll just give them a sense of peace that pass all understanding. Just release them. Release them. Release them. Lord, I pray for anybody here who doesn't know yet their personal Lord, because your promises are only for those who trust you. And Lord, you invite all that comes. So Lord, if there's anybody listening who doesn't know you, they'll say this prayer right where they are, right after me. Heavenly Father, please come into my life. I'm sorry for the mess I made. Come into my life and make me new. Make me whole. Make me your child. In Jesus' name, amen. If you've done this, welcome to the family. And for everybody else, just remember, practice these things, put it into action, and release that arrow. God bless you. Have a great Sunday.